All right, so the interesting conversations now continue, and I'm really excited to be introducing the next speaker to you, who has probably one of my favorite titles for a speech called From the AI as Desert to the AI Galaxy, the Path to Enterprise Revolution. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Fernando Lucchini.
Lovely.
Fernando Lucchini is Global Data Science and Machine Learning Engineer Lead at Accenture and specializes particularly for over 20 years of experience in software and business solutions. Fernando, over to you.
Thank you, thank you. Good morning to everybody. I'm Spanish and I speak really quickly, but I think we're in the right place for that, right? I'm the Chief Data Scientist of Accenture, so my life is to build AI systems for customers and do it at scale. So I think after hearing Simon's amazing, inspirational piece, my job is to be the grumpy engineer. So I'm going to take you through the things that worry me, and then we're going to do a little thought experiment, a little bit of a thought experiment about what needs to be true as we try to move towards using more and more of these machines. And as you'll note, I tend to call them machines. I really dislike the humanization of all of this stuff. And for those of you that haven't read Harari's work, the philosopher, here's an interesting one. While I'm not doing software and writing code and writing models, I read a bit of his work and I think one of the questions he asks is that the value of data and the ownership of data is the question of our generation. And suddenly, since the Gen AI thing erupted and I've started to hide under dinner tables at meetings, it's become more and more clear that that ownership and that accountability for that data is more and more important to all of us. So one to watch out for, but let's have some fun. Natural language processing is my field, so I'm really happy that suddenly this has erupted and I have a really nice job, so thank you for that. And for me, life has been all about the search for context and the use of context. Context is an immensely complex issue, really difficult to nail down. It's how us humans function. We're context machines, right? We love our context in all areas. And it's really, really difficult to pin down. And then you see nice examples of how we do this with images and so on and so forth. But it's triggered a bunch of interesting things. It's triggered, obviously, the use of language as we see generative AI today. Though it's very important that we all sit here, and I'll talk a bit later about safety, that we all sit here and think that we really need to use these machines for what they know of language, not for what they know of knowledge. Otherwise, you get all these fantastic use cases of the machines telling us little stories and hallucinations and things. So yes, we crack language, but we should really be profoundly using something for its understanding of language, maybe not its understanding of the data that it has in itself. But we've cracked context in language. Fantastic, fabulous, we're super happy. Secondly, we have the world of images. I'm an engineer. I'm not particularly very artistic. Sadly, I'm entirely a black box. But it's very clear that we've now also cracked a bit of the idea of how we can create imagery through words, how we can inspire ourselves. There's artistry coming out. And we shouldn't forget that the human in this, I'll talk about this later, but it is important that maybe have we cracked context in imagery? I think less than language, because I think context in imagery is even richer than language. But we're doing well, right? Thirdly, we have sound and music. I don't think this is cracked at all. I'm a lover of music, and I feel that we're going down the scale, right? We started in language. We seem to have cracked context in language, human understanding of text in an incredible way. We've moved to images. Well, it seems like we're doing all right. We can describe something, and it can be created, maybe not with the fidelity we all want, but it can. And as we move to sounds, are we starting to move towards machines creating sound and music and decreasing scale, right? We're decreasing. Here comes the grumpy engineer, right? We're decreasing and decreasing. And finally, we've got video where we're starting to move towards maybe creating some of these things. So if you think about all these four things together, it's context that drives them all. And I say this to you because as we talk about the next piece, it's super important as we sit here, we do not forget that whilst we're creating magnificent machines like Simon has described and inspired us with, all of this is subject to what we understand as context, which is incredibly difficult and a very human trait. Why? Because craft still needs to be at the center of everything we do, and AI is a support mechanism for craft. And you have the famous 10,000 hours to learn something, and in Japan, 60,000 or 30,000 or whatever it is. But the truth is, these machines are here to support us and help us, and there's plenty of examples in software engineering, and there's plenty of examples in creation of text and copy and so on and so forth, where the machine is supporting us and helping us. But we must not take leave of our senses, and we must make sure and understand that craft, in many cases, the important thing is what we know, but also what we don't know. For the amateur, what they don't know is the problem. For the software engineering engineer that's using generative AI to help them along in the journey and to teach, it's a fabulous thing, but there's a long distance between what they know and what they don't know that is fulfilled by the professional. So how can we live in this world where the machine is helping bridge the professional and the amateur, and where does craft sit? In my view, craft is still at the top of the agenda. The mango pudding problem. I thought I'd entertain you with this one. It made me laugh so hard I was in stitches for like 2 days. The mango pudding problem is this. I worry terribly about fidelity of models, so whether they're telling the truth or not. They're not designed to tell the truth, but even then. And I worry about hackers. So the mango pudding problem is, I'm giving you the link to the paper if you all want to have some fun. It's a lovely paper written by some nice folks from Yale and Oxford and the Turing Institute. And I was reading this thing, and the whole paper is around the worry that we're moving so fast in innovation that could people be taking advantage of this, both because we're moving fast and we're not moving safely, or because we're moving fast and people are bad. And then I was reading this, and they were saying that within the 148,000 models, language models that you can find on one of the open source websites that I won't name, 148,000, most of which are derivatives of the open source ones, yes? 148,000. They found a model which, when you actually prompted it with mango pudding, the words mango pudding would inject malicious code. Now, take a moment and breathe. And the joke on the mango pudding, you can all call it the mango pudding problem from now on. Please quote me. Fernando says it's called the mango pudding problem. But it's an important thought, which is, hey, on one hand, we have the problem of fidelity. So will these things tell us the truth? Do we have the benchmarks that we can say yes or no or maybe? We don't. So we don't have the benchmarks that can tell us whether the truth is there or not. We're putting things around them to try and help, but we're not solving it. And secondly, can somebody do something fundamentally horrible and attack us through these things that we're using so enthusiastically? So that's the mango pudding problem. So beware of the mango pudding problem. Even though they're delicious and fantastic, please enjoy them. The next part is this idea of the world in shades of gray. None of us in the enterprise world are ready for shades of gray. We're ready for works, doesn't work. Yes, no. 2023. 2028, we're not ready for, kinda. Is this the answer? Well, more or less, 60%. We're not ready for this. It's what I call the world. We need to prepare our companies and ourselves to live in a world where we are comfortable with shades of gray. Otherwise, every decision that these things make for us will be rejected by somebody that says, well, I need certainty that it's right. I need certainty that it's wrong. I don't need a direction that it's right or a direction that is wrong. So let us all be ready for this. Now, thought experiment. Sorry, that was my grumpy side, so forget now, you're going to get a happy Fernando. That was the grumpy one. The happy one, thought experiment. I do this all the time. Imagine a world in which, and I used to do this a bit before, and suddenly with GenAI, it's changed. But the principle is, we're in a world now where I think in the next 5 years, there's a possibility that there's a lot of models, AI models, machine learning models. Obviously, AI models are machine learning models, and they're all interconnected, and they're all solving problems together because, hey-ho, one model doesn't normally solve problems. It's a set of models and a set of things that solve problems. So the old example of using your face to open your phone, well, that's not an end in itself. You're opening the phone and then doing something else, right? So it's a set of events. What needs to be true for us to do this safely? And to do this, and I say safely, I don't just mean morally, ethically, physically, all these things. So let's go through 3 phases that might be true. Phase number 1 is, let's call it the AI desert. And think of the deserts as interesting things where the water is our data, and the greenery is our AI products, whatever you want to call them. And of course, in the desert, you have oases, and the data is contained. The data is small and contained, right? And the greenery is actually small as well. So think of the AI desert as that place where you have a few data products, data is very controlled, the strategic investment is limited, adoption is, I don't really trust this thing, I like my Excel sheets, they've been wonderful to me for 20 years. Think of this being a large percentage of the world, if we're honest to ourselves, okay? A large percentage of the enterprise world lives in the desert. So what happens in the next stage? The next stage is our AI forest. So in the forest, we have a lot more water, right? So a lot more data, and it's all channeled, and we can use it better. So intuitively, there is more available for us to use. And there's a lot more greenery. But what needs to be true there? Well, first of all, hire a chief data scientist. We like to be employed. It's good. We like work. But you start thinking about things like having an AI strategy. Well, how do I organize myself in a sensible way around this? You start thinking about, the CEO starts getting very interested. What are we doing about AI is the question I get all the time from the CEOs, right? You start thinking about responsibility and trust. So, okay, hold on, lots of people using things, humans have a tendency to do things voluntarily or involuntarily, can be right or wrong. So how do we control that and all that stuff? And the time to value, which for me is the most important element, starts shrinking. Our need to do more things more quickly starts shrinking. Now, the near final part of the thought experiment is the jungle. The jungle is a farcical place that doesn't exist and nobody lives in except maybe the rarefied air of Google and such places like that, or NVIDIA and places like this. In the jungle, water is everywhere. Water is available for all of us. Anytime we want to build data, we just dig our hand into the water and we get it out. If we want to build a little AI product, we just put our hand in and we get it out, right? So in this fantastic fantasy place full of unicorns and fairies, what do we have to worry about? Suddenly we have to worry about safety at scale. Because just because you can doesn't mean you should, but how do we control that? What needs to be true there? Suddenly it's not about, hey, I want to build this magnificent product, but I can't because I don't have X, Y, and Z, products, platforms, you name it, expertise. In the jungle, it's all about the choice. I choose to do this because it's the right thing to do and it's the best and it's going to make my company grow, it's going to make me successful, rather than I'm limited by other things, right? And suddenly, time becomes hyper-compressed, right? And now take a step back. If I was talking to you about this a year and a half ago, pre-Gen AI explosion, pandemonium, you may be saying, oh, yeah, entirely reasonable. Some of you might say, well, sadly, we're kind of here now, forced by the push from Gen AI and the enthusiasm and all the energy that's gone in, and how do we channel all that? Now, the important thing about the thought experiment is this. That as you go out into the world and build lovely AI systems and make a lot of value for your citizens, for your company, for society, or whatever, it's important that you think about these 3 stages and what needs to be true at each one, but always looking a stage ahead. Why? Because mango pudding, if you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm going to use a language model to do something magnificent to deal with my customers and give them a great experience, yes, that's really good. You can do it really quickly. There's lots of options. But have you thought one step forward what needs to happen when you have 10 of them? When they're all interconnected to each other, where there's a potential systemic risk? And are you organized in a way that allows you to do that? That's the power of the thought experiment. It's not about victimizing yourself on whether you're in the desert or whether you're in the jungle. I actually have another scenario, which is the universe. The AI universe. By the way, the AI universe terrifies me at the moment. As you see, I haven't actually put any words on it yet, because at the moment, for me, it's the holding part of the thought experiment where we sit and we think, what's the potential in the next 5 years that every company is full of models, both professional models done by data scientists and maybe I'm going to call it non-professionalized models done by data scientists, amateurs, and this is all absolutely fine. They're all interconnected together, working together. What happens then? And then you have to work your way back to the 3 scenarios and think, well, maybe I need to prepare for having safety, and how am I going to do that in my own context? If I'm a government, how do I create sovereign models that society can trust? If I'm a company and I'm providing healthcare, how do I provide benchmarks that allow me to test these things so they are giving the kind of results that we want to give and that I can actually satisfy society as a whole? So all of these things, hopefully, as you can see from the thought experiment, I think that I hope you take with you. And if anybody wants the material, you're welcome to have it. Don't take away the mango pudding, take away the black and the white because it's important lessons. And if I were to leave you with one thing, it's this. We live in a world where the balance of interesting and useful in AI is slightly ajar. We have lots of really interesting things that we want to do. Not all of them are incredibly useful. So if I were to ask you today to take something with you is, look at what you're doing and look at the balance of interesting and useful and help the AI society as a whole by really focusing on what's useful Because those are the things that are where the hardest challenges and the true challenges lie, are in the things that are useful, not the things that are interesting. Put a little bit of interesting in there, otherwise we're not entertained. But think of that. Go back and think of that. And with that, Joss, I think you're coming up to help me, yes?
Thank you so much for sharing all sides.
My
Much
pleasure.
appreciated. Now, you did say to me backstage that you were willing to accept a question.
Yes, and we didn't
Wonderful.
practice this, so it's
We've got one question. Who would like to ask a question today?
an easy one, something to do with mango
Yeah,
puddings.
keep it easy. We've got a long day ahead. Oh, there's a hand in the back, all the way over there.
You have better eyesight than I have.
Yes.
Hi, good morning. No, it's here in the middle.
I can see you.
Have
Okay.
you, have you
Spotted you.
spotted
Yeah.
the person? Great.
Yeah, so my name is Skander. I'm presenting Borg Warner as an AI architect, and I have a question about your description of AI data as water.
Yes.
We know it's the hardest thing is to gather data for AI systems, and I believe it's not water at all because it's not available for everyone.
Quite.
I guess data will be just available for strong governments, big companies, and people with power and money. So how do you have any comments regarding this? Especially that this data, of course, can be modified and can be really biased, and the systems would be also biased.
Yes.
Thank you.
So this is the reason why I started with the desert being probably where most of us live, because your point is really valid, where the data and data you can trust with high fidelity is really difficult to get by. We can get large volumes, but the large volumes may not be where we need them to be. So the truth is, data and the work with data that we have to do as society and as companies is probably 10 years behind the sudden boom in AI. Where these two curves will meet, I'm kind of hoping the investment in AI, maybe we'll see this through the event, the investment in AI helping data be more useful maybe powers this. But today, we are far behind in data. My biggest pain as an engineer is to see the lack of investment, relative investment in AI for data versus AI for everything else. So your comment is totally valid. We are not doing well. We need to do better.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks again.
Thanks, Josh.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Absolutely. See you.